Good evening. I am a collector of mysterious tales. Tonight, I want to share with you one of Japan's most terrifying urban legends, the story of the slit-mouthed woman, Kuchisaki Onna. Along with the legend itself, I'll be sharing a horror story based on real encounters, particularly focusing on the dark side of modern beauty standards, plastic surgery, and social media that will send chills down your spine. Let's first explore the nature of this haunting entity. Picture this: a deserted street, an empty shopping district, a residential area at dusk. There stands a woman, long black hair, a red coat, and most distinctively, a surgical mask covering the lower half of her face. She approaches you and asks a simple yet terrifying question: Am I pretty? How would you answer? If you say, yes, she'll slowly remove her mask to reveal a mouth grotesquely split from ear to ear. If you say, no, she'll slice your face on the spot. Even answering, average, will provoke her rage. This urban legend first appeared in Kyushu, Japan, in 1979, and quickly spread throughout the country. Newspapers at the time ran headlines such as, Mysterious Beautiful Woman Appears at Night, Slit-Mouthed Woman Now Seen in Tokyo. Schools issue warnings as slit-mouthed woman sightings spread nationwide. What's particularly notable about this urban legend is the remarkable detail in witness accounts. While many urban legends remain vague, the descriptions of the slit-mouthed woman are strikingly specific. She's described as being of average height, always wearing a red coat regardless of the season, with an oddly old-fashioned air about her. Her black hair hangs long and unkempt, and most distinctively, she wears a large surgical mask, a common sight in Japan even before the global pandemic. Often worn for health and beauty reasons, the patterns in her appearances are equally fascinating. When analyzing reported sightings, certain characteristics emerge. First, the timing. The majority of encounters occur between dusk and midnight, with a particular concentration during what photographers call the magic hour. That ethereal time when daylight fades and streetlights begin to flicker. It's as if she deliberately chooses those moments, when the boundary between reality and unreality grows thin. The locations of her appearances follow distinct patterns as well. Most
Well, you don't
commonly,
see
she's seen in empty shopping
you don't
districts,
see empty shelves.
particularly those with shuttered stores. Next most frequent are poorly lit residential areas, followed by routes that children take to and from school. In the 1980s, these kinds of witness accounts were reported. I saw her while walking home after my night shift. At first, I thought she was just an ordinary woman. But when she turned around, her eyes, they were unnaturally white, almost glowing. She appeared before a group of elementary school students. Would you like some candy? She asked, approaching them. Fortunately, a security guard noticed something was wrong. But when he turned to look again, she had vanished without a trace. It happened in a residential area late at night. I heard a voice ask, Am I pretty? When I turned around, there, she was under a streetlight. I ran before she could say anything else. But I could hear footsteps behind me the entire time. When I finally reached home and looked back, no one was there. But when I looked in my entryway mirror, my face somehow seemed different. These accounts share a common thread: her obsession with beauty. Why is she so fixated on physical appearance? The answer might lie in the various origin stories of the slit-mouthed woman. The most widely known version tells of a doctor's wife who was unfaithful. As punishment, her husband cut her mouth from ear to ear, saying, If your beauty causes sin, then let's see how beautiful you are now. Another version, particularly resonant in modern times, suggests she was a victim of failed plastic surgery. In pursuing perfect beauty, she suffered irreversible consequences. This interpretation has gained particular traction in our contemporary society. Yet another theory places her origin in wartime human experiments, a dark reminder of how the pursuit of beauty can lead to inhumane results. What's particularly fascinating is how her appearance has evolved with the times. In 1979, she was typically described wearing a traditional kimono. By the 1980s, she had adopted the red coat of a modern woman. And now, in recent years, witnesses report even more contemporary manifestations. For instance, these are some recent sightings from the 2010s. I saw her in a beauty clinic's waiting room. She wore an expensive designer coat and a large surgical mask, constantly taking selfies on her smartphone. She kept mumbling, "Will this filter make me beautiful?" Then she vanished. But for a moment, I saw her reflection in the waiting room mirror. A mouth split from ear to ear. During a late-night live stream, a popular social media influencer suddenly went pale. Viewers started commenting about someone standing behind her. The broadcast cut off abruptly. Later, her account was deleted, but not before posting one final message: "Have I become beautiful now?" After posting a filtered selfie, I received a strange comment at midnight. "Is that beauty real?" Along with it was a photo of a woman in a surgical mask. I blocked the account immediately, but afterward, all my photos somehow became corrupted. Every single one edited to show a face with a split mouth. These modern accounts suggest that the slit-mouthed woman has evolved to match our times. The legend has spread beyond Japan's borders, taking on different forms worldwide. In South Korea, she's known as cut mouth, often associated with failed plastic surgery patients. There are stories of her appearing in beauty clinics late at night, holding photos of her former face and crying, "I want to go back to this." In China, the split-face lady supposedly appears through photo editing apps. Users report seeing a woman with a split mouth mysteriously appearing in their overly edited selfies. In America, she's become known as the slit-mouthed woman, primarily spreading through social media. Beauty influencers, in particular, share stories of encountering her. This global spread might reflect our society's collective obsession with beauty. A psychologist once analyzed the slit-mouthed woman phenomenon this way. Her question, "Am I pretty?" symbolizes modern humanity's deep-seated anxieties. In the age of social media, we're constantly performing, always being watched. This creates a painful disconnect between our real selves and our curated online personas. Interestingly, reported sightings of the slit-mouthed woman spike during specific periods. 1979, when cosmetic surgery began becoming mainstream. Late 1990s, the rise of camera phones. 2010s, the emergence of photo editing apps and social media. 2020s, when mask wearing became normalized globally. In other words, sightings increased during periods of significant shifts in beauty standards. What's also noteworthy is how the nature of the horror has evolved in witness accounts. Early stories focused on physical terror, the fear of being cut. However, modern encounters describe a more psychological horror. For example, "Since meeting her, I feel like my face changes slightly every time I look in the mirror. All my edited photos somehow transform into distorted versions of my face. My social media photos keep changing by themselves, as if someone, or something, is altering them." These modern fears seem to reflect our contemporary anxieties. Particularly interesting is the motif of the surgical mask. Why does the slit-mouthed woman wear one? Perhaps it symbolizes the masks we all wear in modern society. Beautifully filtered selfies, perfectly curated social media posts, meticulously crafted online profiles. We've all, unknowingly, started wearing multiple layers of masks. Even more concerning is how this beauty obsession creates real world tragedies. According to recent surveys, 78% of people aged 10 to 29 are unsatisfied with their appearance. Most cite how they look on social media as their primary concern. The number of cosmetic surgery procedures has tripled in the last decade. Most alarming is the trend of excessive surgeries, purely for social media appeal. I want to be a more perfect version of myself. I want to look more beautiful. I want to get closer to my ideal face. But can such wishes really come true? Or, during my research into beauty-related topics, I heard some disturbing rumors. They centered around a famous beauty clinic in Tokyo. Stories of a mysterious woman appearing there late at night. A woman who sought perfect beauty suddenly disappeared. Strange screams from the operating room at midnight. Unexplainable shadows on security cameras. Sightings of a woman in a surgical mask. While investigating these rumors, I met a woman who told me a story that chillingly connected the slit-mouthed woman legend with the dark side of modern beauty standards. It's the story of a woman who pursued perfect beauty, only to meet an irreversible fate. A curse of beauty in the age of social media. A distorting self-image, and scars that will never fade. Now, let me share my story titled, A Perfect Smile. A perfect smile. It's an era when anyone can become beautiful. But it's also an era when everyone is forced to be beautiful. My name is Masaki Saki. I work as an art director at a major advertising agency in Tokyo, handling beauty-related accounts. I'm 31, single, and spend my days creating campaigns for cosmetics, beauty salons, and aesthetic medical clinics, selling perfect beauty. It was a job that slowly began to eat away at my soul. My first plastic surgery was at 27. It was supposed to be something minor, just refining my nose bridge, something no one would notice. But that small change would drastically alter my destiny. That night, I was working late as usual. A campaign for a new beauty clinic. Deadline in 2 days. On my monitor was a photo of a model with perfect beauty. I was retouching it to make her even more perfect. Removing wrinkles, smoothing skin, enlarging eyes. I was completely absorbed in this work when it happened. The model's face in the monitor moved slightly. At first, I thought it was fatigue-induced hallucination. But no, it was definitely moving. The model's mouth, as if trying to say something. Am I? I thought I heard a voice, even though I wasn't wearing headphones. Am I pretty? I heard it clearly. The model's mouth opened, and its corners began to stretch upward, like they were splitting apart. I frantically switched off the monitor. Rubbing my eyes, I let out a deep sigh. Just tired, I told myself. That's all it was. On my way home, walking toward my usual subway station, I saw her in a deserted shopping arcade. Despite the winter cold, she wore a thin coat and a large surgical mask. Long black hair swaying in the wind, her back turned to me. Something about her walk caught my attention. Something unnatural, mechanical, almost doll-like. She walked ahead of me, through the shopping arcade, into a residential area. A street with few working lights.
Yup.
Her back view seemed oddly familiar. Just as this thought crossed my mind, she stopped. Slowly, she turned around. Under the streetlight, I saw her face with its large surgical mask. Those eyes, staring directly at me. They were somehow empty. Pale, grayish irises. But something lurking in their depths froze my spine. Am I? The voice was identical to what I'd heard from the monitor. Low, hoarse, yet somehow crystal clear. Am I pretty? That question felt familiar. Deja vu. No, not quite. This was the question I faced every day. Every time I looked in the mirror. Every time I took a photo. The question I kept asking myself. My voice trembled. I didn't want to answer. But the woman took one step closer, then another. Am I pretty? The same question again. This time with a more urgent tone. The streetlight flicked. In that alternating light and shadow, her figure seemed distorted, like an old film reel. Why, yes, I think you're pretty, I blurted out instinctively. At that moment, her eyes changed. Something ignited in their depths. Really? She raised her hands to her mask. You shouldn't tell lies. Slowly, the mask came away. The first thing I saw was the scar. A massive surgical scar extending to both ears. The suture marks lined up like crawling insects. And beneath that, I gasped. Her mouth was literally split from ear to ear. All teeth exposed, gums fully visible. The wound looked fresh, as if blood might start dripping any moment. This is my real face. The split mouth moved, flesh turning up with each movement. Would you like to look the same? I stepped back. I needed to run, but my legs wouldn't move. We're all the same. The woman stretched out her arm. Her fingers were unnaturally long. This is the price of seeking perfection. Just then, my phone rang. The ringtone shattered the silence. I reflexively reached into my bag for my phone. For that split second, my eyes left hers. When I looked up again, she was gone. My heart was pounding. Cold sweat ran down my back, my legs trembling. I managed to lean against a nearby telephone pole and checked my phone. It was a call from my mother. Finally coming to my senses, I started running desperately. Never looking back, just running. I almost fell several times before reaching my apartment building. Opening the front door, I hurriedly locked it. With a sigh of relief, I tried to fix my hair using my smartphone's front camera. That's when I saw something in the screen that almost made me scream. My mouth had begun to split slightly at the corners. I couldn't sleep at all that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that split mouth. The scars reaching to the ears. The exposed teeth and gums. And those words, the price of seeking perfection. When dawn came, the nightmare didn't end. I was terrified to look in the bathroom mirror. I barely managed to apply makeup, using a hand mirror, and wore a thicker mask than usual to work. At the office, my colleague Yuki Asano approached me with concern. Masaki, you look pale. Are you okay? Yes, just haven't slept well. As I answered, my eyes were drawn to her mouth. I hadn't noticed before, but she too had started wearing a mask constantly lately. Actually, Yuki, I couldn't help but ask, have you met any strange women recently? Yuki's eyes widened slightly. What kind of woman? Wearing a mask, and... I stumbled over my words. How could I explain that horrifying sight? Masaki. Yuki looked around before continuing in a whisper. Last night, I also. Just then, our department head called out loudly. Good morning. Time for the morning meeting. The conversation was cut short, but I didn't miss the fear in Yuki's eyes. After the meeting, Back at my desk, I received data for a new project, an advertising campaign for a beauty clinic. Opening the files, photos of models began displaying one after another. That's when I thought I saw all the models in the screen turn to face me at once. I quickly turned off the monitor, taking a deep breath. Maybe I was seeing things due to lack of sleep lately. I stood up to go wash my face in the bathroom. The women's restroom was only on the top floor, so I took the elevator. Just as the doors were about to close, someone hurried in. A woman with long black hair, large surgical mask. My heart nearly stopped, but it was just Yamashita from accounting. Black Lives Matter! She too was wearing a thick mask, just like me. The short ride to the 15th floor felt strangely long. Glancing sideways, I saw Yamashita touching her mouth area. Something seemed to be moving under her mask. The elevator arrived, doors opening. Yamashita stepped out first, her hair swaying, looking just like that woman. I rushed into the bathroom, locking myself in a stall. My chest was tight, breathing becoming shallow. Was this a panic attack? Finally calming down, I emerged from the stall. When I looked in the mirror to wash my hands, I froze. My reflection showed faint scars extending from both sides of my mask. Gently touching them, I felt definite raised lines, like surgical sutures. That afternoon, an emergency meeting was called about a new campaign for Eternal Beauty Clinic. Entering the conference room, I immediately sensed something wrong. Everyone was wearing masks, even Maeda from sales, who always wore bright red lipstick, had on a black mask. And Murai from media, known for her perfect makeup, wore an unusually large surgical mask. The client joined via online conference. The clinic's director also wore a surgical mask. Now, about the new campaign concept. As the director began explaining, I looked down at the materials. The tagline read, "Eternal Beauty for You." Below were rows of post-surgery case photos. Suddenly, my eyes were fixed on the photos. The models' mouths in the post-surgery photos were all blurry. No, not blurry. They were moving. The models' mouths were slowly splitting apart. "Masaki?" The voice snapped me back. Everyone was staring at me. "I'm sorry." I quickly flipped through the pages. But every page showed the same scene. The models in the photos, one after another, their mouths splitting. And all their faces turned toward me. "Aren't we beautiful?" I heard the voice clearly. I stood up abruptly. "Excuse me, I'm not feeling well." I fled the conference room, running down the hallway, not to the elevator, but to the emergency stairs. As I ran down the stairs, I sensed something following me. Looking back, black hair was hanging down from the upper floors. Countless faces with surgical masks peering over the railings. "Wait, become one of us. You can't escape." The voices overlapped. Finally reaching the first floor, I burst out of the building. Outside, dusk was already falling. I ran through deserted back streets. I had to get straight home. That's when I saw figures ahead. Women wearing masks. 3, 5, 10. They kept appearing from alleyways, surrounding me. All wearing the same surgical masks. All with the same long black hair. And all staring at me. "You can't escape." The voice of that first woman. "We're all the same." The women simultaneously reached for their masks. "You wanted to be beautiful, didn't you?" The masks coming off. "You sought perfection, didn't you?" Split mouths revealed. "So become like us." I closed my eyes and screamed with all my might. When I opened them, I was on a subway platform. fluorescent lights flickering irregularly overhead. There were several passengers on the platform, but they all faced the wall, and every one of them wore white surgical masks. While waiting for the train, I
Agora você pode
desperately
vir e
tried
apoiar
to
a mãozinha ali
maintain
de
my
novo
sanity.
no cabo.
What had just happened must have been a hallucination, just fatigue, or maybe a panic attack. But the pain around my mouth was undeniably real. The train arrived. I boarded an empty car. Two high school girls sat across from me, quietly discussing their selfies on a smartphone. Hey, did I over-edit this one? No way. Everyone edits their photos nowadays. But I'm starting to forget what my real face looks like. At that moment, their smartphone screen seemed to turn towards them. The mouths in their selfies began to split slowly. The girls screamed. I quickly looked away, catching my reflection in the train window. Something was writhing under my mask. At the next station, as I approached the doors to get off, I heard a voice behind me. Am I pretty? I turned around. There she was at the far end of the car. Not alone this time. Multiple women, all wearing the same masks, all with long black hair. The doors opened. I desperately leapt onto the platform, running up the escalator, footsteps following behind. Multiple, irregular footsteps. Reaching ground level, I found myself in an unfamiliar shopping district. Shuttered stores lined the street, streetlights casting intermittent pools of light. I hurried along, then noticed reflections in store windows. Countless shadows following me. Why run when you can't escape? Join us for eternal beauty. Voices overlapping, footsteps getting closer. Turning a corner, I hit a dead end. Looking back, they already blocked the entrance. Accept your fate. The first woman stepped forward. Become one of us. I pressed my back against the wall. No escape. Just then, my phone rang in my pocket. The ringtone piercing the silence. Looking at the screen, Eternal Beauty Clinic, calling. This is a call to confirm your surgery appointment. The voice on the phone overlapped with the woman's voice before me. Your surgery, the women all removing their masks in unison, begins now. When I regained consciousness, I was on an operating table. Above me, a large surgical light blazed blindingly bright. Around me stood numerous doctors and nurses, all in green surgical gowns and masks. Let's begin the surgery. The surgeon's voice, somehow familiar. A surgery to obtain eternal beauty. They gave me an anesthetic injection, but my consciousness didn't fade. Instead, it became unnaturally sharp. A nurse brought a mirror. My reflection showed my unmasked face. Surgical markings were already drawn on my mouth, lines extending to my ears. Now you'll acquire true beauty. The surgeon picked up a scalpel, their hands unnaturally long. Wait, I tried to resist, but my body wouldn't move. The surgeon removed their mask. A split mouth revealed. Behind them, all the nurses began removing their masks too. The same face as us. Perfect beauty. The eternal, ideal form. The scalpel approached. Cold metal touched my skin. Suddenly, the operating room door burst open. Stop, Yuki's voice. Leave Masaki alone. Turning my head, I saw Yuki, Yamashita, and the high school girls from earlier. All unmasked, but their mouths weren't split. We don't need fake beauty anymore. Yuki shouted. We're taking back our real faces. The surgeon smiled grotesquely. But you all wanted it too. The split mouth opening wide. Perfect beauty. No. Now Yamashita stepped forward. What we wanted wasn't this twisted perfection. At those words, the atmosphere in the operating room changed. The surgical light began to flicker. Liars. The surgeon's voice distorted. Everyone's the same. Everyone sought perfection. That's when I realized. This surgeon was the woman who first appeared before me. And she had once been. You were a plastic surgeon? I managed to force out the words, pursuing perfect beauty until her expression changed, the split mouth distorting even more. Yes, I was once called an authority in cosmetic surgery. After endlessly pursuing perfect beauty, her form wavered, the surgical gown transforming into an old-fashioned dress. Everyone came seeking perfection. A more beautiful nose, larger eyes, a smaller face. Her voice seemed to echo from underground. But it never ends. People are never satisfied. The surgical light flickered erratically. In its strobing light, her appearance kept changing. A young resident, an established surgeon, a celebrated authority in plastic surgery, And then, one day, I realized, perfect beauty doesn't exist in this world. The final form. As an aged doctor, her face slowly splitting apart. I tried to test my skills on myself. Tried to create the ultimate, perfect smile. She touched her mouth. Yes, these scars. They're from the surgery I performed on myself. The temperature in the operating room plummeted. My breath visible in white puffs. Since then, I've realized, every woman in this world wears a false mask. Her form distorting further. Social media, makeup, surgery. Everyone desperate to create a fake self. The nurses around us began transforming too, each becoming women from different eras. So I decided to make all women reclaim their true faces. At that moment, the operating room walls began to melt. Beyond them, countless operating rooms, and on each operating table lay women, all with split mouths. This is my beauty clinic. She spread her arms wide. A sanctuary for women who sought eternal beauty. I tried to roll off the operating table and escape, but my body wouldn't move. Accept your fate. Her scalpel approached my face again. You too will reclaim your true face. That's when Yuki screamed. No, that's not a true face. Her voice resonated with something. The entire operating room began to vibrate. The true face, Yamashita joined in, exists within us. The high school girls stepped forward too. We don't need filters. We don't need fake perfection. At their voices, the operating room's illusion began to waver. Then, something strange happened. The surgical light began focusing like a spotlight on a single point. In that light, her form gradually began to change. Her split mouth opened wider. But this time, instead of horror, I felt something sad. No, no. Her voice trembled. People will always seek perfection. Always. At that moment, the operating room walls became mirrors. They reflected all her forms. A hopeful face from her residency days. A confident expression when she was a successful surgeon. And her final moments on the operating table, mutilating her own face. No, I only wanted perfection. Her voice became childlike. Everyone wants a perfect smile. In that instant, I saw tears in her eyes. From her split mouth, black liquid dripped instead of blood. But, doctor, I addressed her directly for the first time. There's no such thing as a perfect smile. Lies, she screamed. The operating room shook violently. The surrounding walls became entirely mirrored. Countless reflections of her, countless split mouths, and countless tears. Everyone praised your surgeries. Everyone sought your skills. I continued, yet you couldn't be satisfied with yourself. Silence. Her scream became a piercing shriek. At that moment, all her reflections in the mirrors transformed into her younger self. The pure, beautiful doctor before her mouth was split. Perfection is just an illusion. Yuki said quietly, you lost yourself chasing that illusion. Her form began to become transparent. Was I wrong? Her voice no longer held any intimidation. Only deep sorrow remained. Perfect beauty doesn't exist in this world. I stood up from the operating table. But that's not something to be sad about. Her form became increasingly transparent. Then, what am I? You were a brilliant doctor. Yamashita said, you just couldn't forgive yourself. Her reflections in the mirrors began disappearing one by one. The last remaining was her young self, with an innocent smile before the split. Thank you. With those faint words, she completely vanished. The operating room returned to normal. But something had fundamentally changed. When I came to, I was in a regular hospital room. Sunlight streamed through the window. Only the sound of dripping IV fluid broke the silence. I was lying in a hospital bed. How long had I been unconscious? Oh, you're awake? A nurse entered the room. Normal white uniform. Normal disposable mask. Where am I? Eternal Beauty Clinic. You were found collapsed on the street last night. My memories were hazy. Had all those terrifying events been just a nightmare? My face. The nurse looked puzzled. There's nothing. I quickly opened my smartphone's front camera. There was my normal face. No scars, no split, nothing. I let out a sigh of relief. It had all been a nightmare. Oh right, this. The nurse handed me an old notebook. We found this where you collapsed. We thought it might be yours. I tilted my head in confusion. An unfamiliar notebook, but there it was, the name, Saki, written on it. After the nurse left, I cautiously opened the notebook. It was like a doctor's medical records. The date was from 30 years ago. On the last page was written, in pursuing eternal beauty, I lost my own face. To whoever reads this record, don't be trapped by the illusion of perfect beauty. Because the text ended there. Just then, I heard voices from the hallway. I hear there's a new resident coming? Yes, drive. Saki. She specializes in cosmetic surgery. I froze. Looking in the mirror, I saw myself in a white coat. And at the corners of my mouth, slight splits beginning to form. Is this the path I've chosen? I heard a faint laugh behind me. When I turned around, no one was there. But down the hallway, I thought I saw a woman standing there. A young doctor wearing a large surgical mask with long black hair. Eternal beauty, for you. Her voice
Tudo
echoed
julgado por
within
uma
me.
comissão.
Slowly standing up, I reached into my white coat pocket. There was a brand new scalpel. How was that story? Actually, after finishing writing this tale, I received a peculiar email. The sender was from a beauty clinic in Tokyo. The subject line read, Eternal beauty, for you. When I opened it, there was a photo of an old notebook. A medical record dated 30 years ago. On its last page was clearly written, Don't be trapped by the illusion of perfect beauty. The rest of the text was cut off, as if someone had deliberately removed it. Strangely enough, right after receiving this email, my photo editing app suddenly malfunctioned, corrupting all my saved edited photos. A message appeared on the screen, Time to reclaim your true face. Perhaps this is all just coincidence. But sometimes I wonder, is the slit-mouthed woman really just an urban legend? Next time, I'll share another mysterious tale with you. If you found this story interesting, please subscribe to my channel. I hope to reveal more terrifying truths lurking behind the facade of beauty. Until we meet again. And by the way, I'd advise those watching this video not to look in mirrors at midnight, because